So for chapter 16, I'm talking about the autonomic nervous system. And it coordinates more kind of things that are going on behind the scenes, like your cardiovascular, your respiratory system, your digestive system, excretory system, and reproductive system. And it adjusts things like your internal water levels, electrolyte balance, nutrient levels, and dissolve gas concentrations in your body fluids. Somatic nervous system, it's going to lower motor neurons, or the lower motor neurons are going to synapse on the skeletal muscles. So remember, anytime you see somatic, we're talking skeletal muscle, okay? Autonomic nervous system, central nervous system, you're going to have synapses on the second visceral motor neuron, and they're going to synapse on a peripheral effector, okay? So going to some effector outside the nervous system. Or out, yeah, basically outside of the nervous system. All right. Okay, so preganglionic, using these before. So it's visceral motor neurons in your central nervous system that are synapsing on ganglionic neurons in your autonomic ganglia outside of the central nervous system. Okay. Now, like most of our parts of the nervous system, it has different divisions. You have the sympathetic and parasympathetic parasympathetic divisions. In the sympathetic division, it's your fight or flight response, causes excitation generally, heightened levels of somatic activity. You need more skeletal muscle activity. So you can get heightened, you get heightened mental alertness. You get increased metabolic rate. You get reduced digestive and urinary function, okay? So you don't really want all of that going on when you need to fight or run away. So it activates your energy reserves so that you can access them. You have increased respiratory rate, so you're breathing faster, and dilation of your respiratory passageways so that you can get more gas exchange. Your heart rate increases, your blood pressure increases. You also activate your sweat glands, okay? So in the parasympathetic division, this is kind of the opposite. It's more rest and repose, or rest and digest. You get an inhibition instead of excitation. Stimulates more visceral activity. Okay, so it's typically gonna be activated in parasympathetic division after you've eaten a lot. Okay, so your general pattern, you have decreased metabolic rate, your heart rate goes down, blood pressure goes down. You have increased secretion by your salivary and digestive glands, which makes sense because you've probably eaten a lot and you need to digest that food. You have increased movement or motility and blood flow in your digestive tract. You've got, because you're wanting absorption there, right? Move that food through your digestive tract. Stimulation of urination and defecation, okay? So what are some different innervation patterns? So here's your sympathetic and your parasympathetic divisions are going to affect target organs, parts of your body, different parts of your body. And you're going to be releasing neurotransmitter by postganglionic fibers, so after the ganglion. Okay, so there's three general statements about neurotransmitters and their effects. You have all preganglionic autonomic fibers, okay, are going to release acetylcholine, whether they're sympathetic or parasympathetic, and the effect is excitatory. Okay, with postganglionic parasympathetic fibers, we're going to release ACH, and the effects can be excitatory or inhibitory. And these are postganglionic. Okay, so that's different from the ones that are preganglionic. All right, and most of the postganglionic sympathetic terminals are going to release norepinephrine, which typically have an excitatory effect. Okay. So your sympathetic divisions, so they have preganglionic neurons that are between the segments of your spinal cord T1 to L2. Remember, T is for thoracic, L is for lumbar. And your ganglionic neurons in your ganglia near your vertebral column. So your ganglionic neurons are in 3 areas. You have a sympathetic chain, a collateral ganglia, and adrenal medullae. The sympathetic chain has, basically it's going to control the effectors in your body wall and inside your thoracic cavity. You have postganglionic fibers that are going to form sympathetic nerves and go directly to their visceral destination. All right, so you have collateral ganglia, and these are going to innervate tissues and organs in your abdominal pelvic cavity. You also have preganglionic fibers that are going to form splanchnic nerves that are going to innervate your collateral ganglia. You also have adrenal medullae that release your neurotransmitters epinephrine and norepinephrine into your bloodstream. Okay, remember, sympathetic is more excitatory, right? Okay, sympathetic activation. Here, the entire division's responding to a crisis. Okay, it's going to affect peripheral tissues throughout the body and activity in the central nervous system. So effects for sympathetic activation, you have increased alertness, person's more on edge. You get feelings of euphoria, pleasure, energy, disregard for danger, insensitivity to pain. Okay, so a person that's sympathetic, may be able to, do something really courageous, and then the next day they feel terrible because they hurt themselves and they didn't feel it. Right? So, increased cardiovascular and respiratory centers. You're going to get elevated blood pressure. Your breathing rate will go up. Your heart rate will go up. You're going to breathe more deeply. You're going to have general elevation in your muscle tone or increase in your muscle tone. Person may look tense, okay, maybe shivering. All right, a little more about the parasympathetic divisions. So here are the preganglionic neurons in your brainstem in these segments in the sacrum, portion of the spinal cord. So that's one part of your parasympathetic division. You also have ganglionic neurons in the peripheral ganglia, so out in the peripheral nerves, are located next to target organs, or they could be inside of the target organs. You also have preganglionic fibers that form what we call pelvic nerves, and they're innervating ganglia there in the pelvic region. And all preganglionic and postganglionic fibers in your parasympathetic division are going to release acetylcholine at different synapses and neuroeffector junctions. All right. So with your sympathetic and parasympathetic divisions will interact with each other. You get your sympathetic division that has widespread influence on visceral and somatic structures. Okay, remember viscerals like your smooth muscle, okay, cardiovascular, respiratory system, somatic skeletal muscle. Parasympathetic divisions innervating only your visceral structures. They're serviced by your cranial nerves, lying within your abdominal pelvic cavity. Okay, concept here, dual innervation. So most organs are actually getting input from both divisions. Okay, because most organs are not skeletal muscle, right? So you also have concept of autonomic tone, which is a resting level of activation in your autonomic motor neurons. Yes? Are there any neurons that are skeletal muscle? So any glands? So you have sort of a tissue like in your diaphragm. Your diaphragm has some involuntary portions to it and some voluntary. So it's technically skeletal muscle. And so you can have some voluntary control of your diaphragm. You know, singers often have very good control of their diaphragm. You know, there are some involuntary portions to that, but it is also voluntary. So that's kind of a hybrid. All right, that's chapter 16.